Hello, hello. So we took 10 minutes from the coffee break. We gave it back. The conversation was too exciting in the previous session. We might do the same with this session, so maybe it will be 5:40. For those of you that haven't joined the first session, either here in person, in Poland, I never thought I'd go to Luxembourg and visit Poland. We are in the room called Poland, but all the member states are here on the corridors. It's very convenient. I assume that DG ENER could come here and talk to all the ministries in a single day. Jokes aside, I'm going to do a quick recap of the scope of our workshop, which has 2 sessions. We started with the first session that was very policy focused. We continue still in that mindset. The only difference is that we don't have officials from the European Commission as part of the speaking list or panelists. We will have only project representatives, but this means that we will go even further in depth in terms of the family of projects. Those of you in the room, you see here the Next Gen EPC cluster family with all the projects that have started, some of them in 2019, so those ones are already closed, and the proposals were written for those ones in 2018. So this is a mature cluster with a lot of results, and it's my pleasure to have been one of the person that facilitated the coming together of these projects, and our mantra that we share of going farther together as opposed to fast alone. If you want to receive the slide deck and recording directly, immediately from us, there is a registration list, participant list, sorry, and my colleague Pablo, he's supporting with that. So if any of you didn't sign it yet in the first session, this is for the in-person participants, of course, please raise your hand so that Pablo can see you, and then you can immediately sign. And we have some of the roll-ups of the individual projects. Of course, it's not always easy to bring everything, so everything is here on this slide with QR codes. There are also some flyers outside the door when you leave. If you want to take a flyer with you, be our guest. So getting back to the session, we have 1 hour and a half roughly, and it's the last session of the day. So I assume you had already a few coffees. So if you don't already know this, people that have seen me moderating are aware with this, but I would like to introduce you to the power pose. Maybe you know it already. Can I see a show of hands? Does anybody know the power pose? Okay, you've been to my session. So the power pose is basically just to sit upright, to keep your back straight and shoulders back, and breathe in slowly and exhale. And there is research behind this, so there's not only research on energy performance and smartness of buildings, there is research on this, and apparently in this position you release the stress out and you can focus, you can be mindful, whereas if you stay like this, you become stressed and closed and, oh, where am I doing, where am I going? So try to do this instead of drinking more coffee, because at this moment of the day you can drink 3 extra, it will not make a difference. Okay, so we are all awake, we can continue. I changed the slide. This was part of my introduction. I skipped that. This is the big family also for the participants online, because I'm sure you cannot see the roll-up with all the projects. So you will receive this. We started with 3, we are 16 now and continuing. You have the QR code. If you scan it, you get access to the agenda so that you don't have any surprises. Maybe you'll remember what I'm saying now. So after me, we have a series of 5 lightning talks. In the first session, we had 2 projects from the cluster. Now we have the other 5. So these are the 7 projects still active, taking the baton further and further and further. So we will start with Time Pack. We have Leandro here with us. Then we continue with Chronicle. George has joined us. Smart Living EPC with Paris. Paris, you're in Poland. Tunes with our colleague Georg. And we close the presentations with EPBDY's Denisa. And then we will try to replicate what happened in the first session, a very lively, open exchange with the audience, so I'm counting on all of you. last thing before I welcome Leandro, timekeeping is my duty, so I'll try to notify you. We agreed with 10 minutes so that we have room for discussion at the end. So it highly depends on your performance, how much time we will have at the end. I will take max 10 minutes because I will be standing between you and gala dinner, and it can get messy, so I'll not do that. Without further ado, please, Leandro, the floor is yours. Would you like to be seated? Yes, okay. Please.
Here. Yes, thank you. So thank you very much, Andre, for organizing this session. So TimePack is finishing this month. So we are in the last month of the project. I will announce at the end. So this diagram is already from this time, from 4 or 5 years ago. And this was our vision when we wrote the proposal. And it's still our claim. I think we are moving from, we think that we are moving from a concept of one-off certification for an isolated building in one time to something that is more like a continuous assessment of a building, not as an isolated object, but as part of the built environment connected to other infrastructure systems and being generating exchanges with that environment. So this, in a way, this idea already questions a little bit the concept of certification. So it's not only about putting a stamp to an object at a given time. It's about a continuous evaluation of the assessment of a building in a complex context, in the context of sustainable development over time. This was our idea. Another diagram from the proposal is this one, which we think that is still valid. When we talk about certification EPC, we rely on data. And in the same way that the building is part of a larger environment, the built environment, we also think that the EPC has to be seen in a larger context. The EPC as data flow has these 4 stages: generation, storage, analysis, and exploitation of the data. And each one of these 4 stages right now has different kind of problems or difficulties. Just to mention one, storage, as I mentioned before, not all the countries right now have databases to store the EPC, and we are already 20 years with EPC. So this is an issue to solve, but also the connection between these stages is problematic. How to, even in countries where we have EPC databases, to get this database and information and exploit this data in a meaningful way is not straightforward. It's also a challenge. So there are many challenges here in this circle to make true that certification is something over time, during the lifetime of the building, on a continuous basis. This diagram itself, I think, summarizes many of the challenges that, in a way, they are also contained in the recast because they are not really solved. As I said before, in the same way that the building is part of a larger built environment, the EPC right now, we believe, and particularly after the recast, has to be seen in a larger context. In the context of the Smart Readiness Indicator, also in the context of levels and sustainable development. If we focus only on the EPC based on the last recast, there are concepts like the renovation passport, which is another challenge. The EPC databases connected to the national databases, connected to the building observatory. All of these are issues that have to be really developed and put into place because we don't have neither the tools nor the methods to do that, not even at national level, but at the European level. The larger context of all of this diagram, indeed, is the sustainability issue. We are doing the certification because not only because we want to improve the building as an object, but we want to contribute to the carbon neutrality of the built environment. This is our final goal. So therefore, the certification has to be in the larger context of sustainability. Therefore, the macro objectives of levels, these 6 macro objectives, greenhouse emissions, circular material, life cycle, efficient use of water, health and adaptation to resilience in climate change and optimized life cycle, all of this is relevant for certification, for the overall assessment of the building. So what we did in TimePack in these 3 years, this was the outline of the project we have done. We proposed to develop 5 scenarios we call transversal deployment scenarios to think how we should work in this horizon along this direction of thinking, transforming certification into assessment over the lifetime of the building in a context of sustainable development. This was the principles of our scenarios. So we propose 5 scenarios with 5 different topics, which all of them make the reflection of how we are now doing the certification, how should we doing certification in the future along these principles of the EPBD Recast on 5 topics that are interrelated. So it's a scenario thinking to get knowledge about what is our current situation and what are the gaps to arrive to this horizon, to these goals that are in a way implicit in the EPBD. And these 5 topics, these 5 scenarios were the first one focusing on integration of BIM and EPC, the second one on enhancing EPC with operational data, the third one about the building renovation passport, how to connect it to EPC databases. The fourth one is about the connection of EPC and SRI, which we have seen already a topic in other projects. And the 5 is about making large-scale analysis of at the municipal level with the EPC databases to develop large-scale renovation programs. So these 5 scenarios were developed over 1 year, and they are reported. I will only outline, I will not get in depth into them because there's no time, but everything is already documented, reported. You can find the full deliverable and also a summarized fact sheet. On the first one, our finding was condensed in these guidelines about how to implement BIM, the technology we have today, not the future technology. TimePack is a cooperation support action project. It's not an innovation action. We did not develop new technology. We just make the reflection of where we are now, which tools we have, how to use them, improve them to arrive to the objectives of the improved EPC. So in the case of BIM, what we did was these guidelines. After testing the BIM with different certification tools in different countries, we did all the process with 30 BIM models from 6 countries, and the result of the experience is condensed in these guidelines. About the increasing the EPC, enhancing the EPC with operational data, we did a similar exercise with 6 participating countries, and we enhanced the EPC with these 3 indicators: the evaluation of the energy efficiency measures, the indoor environmental quality, and the implementation of the bugs assessment. The third one about renovation passports with data repositories, we did the exercise of seeing where we had EPC databases, how we could connect and extract information to do the renovation passport, and backwards, how the new certification could be fed into the database. And the SRI and EPC, we came with a code of conduct for smart readiness and sustainability rating, very much aligned with what we have seen before in other projects, about guidelines, how to combine it, how to combine the energy auditing and the certification together in a single process, and everything that implies. And finally, in the procedures to renovate or to generate large-scale building renovation programs, we did also practical exercises extracting from existing EPC databases the information we need to convert in archetypes that were used to make simulation of how to improve the existing building stock. So all of these 5 scenarios are reported in very comprehensive deliverables and also in fact sheets, which are a summary of these reports. TimePack did not finish with this scenario thinking, but the knowledge we acquired in this year, in the second year of the project, then we transfer it through the TimePack Academy, through webinars and in-class training to the stakeholders involved, and that's an important part of our contribution, the TimePack Academy. We have developed 6 online webinars, very well attended, actually, over 100 attendees in each webinar, 8 in-class training in 6 countries, also with very well attended. And we realized through this experience that there is a niche, there is a need. And indeed, I think this is one of the conclusions I think we can discuss. TimePack, we have discovered that there is a need. Now the question is how to respond to that need over the future, because it's a long time training. It's not something that has to be now for 1 year. I think that the training path is a long one. And in this direction, we will make the next TimePack webinar with Build Up on November 5th. Just to finalize, the project will finish in October, and we have our final conference next week in Barcelona. So you are kindly invited in case you are passing by. So to join us, it will not be online, it will be in person. And we have a keynote from Pau Garcia Audi from CINEA. We have 3 roundtables and 8 paper presentations in an open call that we organize. So thank you very much. And I think 10 minutes, right?
You did it below 9, so
okay.
Well done.
I can explain more then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Leandro. If you have questions, please write them down, or if you're very good in remembering them, just keep them in your mind. We will get to the interactive part. George, please. We have with us a colleague from Chronicle project that will share with us, in a nutshell, in a sort of lightning talk, what they have done. Do you prefer to sit down or want to stand?
I can do it both ways.
As you wish.
Actually, let me be there at least to change the slides.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. I'm George Yanakis. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I would like to thank our moderator, Andrei, for moderating all this session and discussion on this very interesting topic. I'm George Yanakis from Q Technologies, representing the Chronicle project, a project actually that aims to deliver digital tools that are solutions provided to the key stakeholders that are involved in the whole process of renovating buildings, assessing the performance of the buildings, and so on. Apart from that, another objective of the project has been to develop a holistic energy performance framework. A framework actually where all the information is being hosted and digitalized. Concerning this technical solution, I would like to mention that our framework is based on BIM when we are talking about static data and IoT data, both combined in a standard way. What I mean by that is that we are trying to follow standards to the extent possible when we are developing and implementing the technical solutions. The last but not least objective, main objective, is to validate the Chronicle results and try to maximize the replication potential in real-world settings, meaning that demonstration on actual sites in different European countries. So conceptually, Chronicle delivers a comprehensive tool set which aims to significantly contribute to the building performance digitalization and implementation of digital building logbooks. And all this for future value-driven services. Sorry for the low resolution of the image. Something went wrong. But from this conceptual diagram, I would like to highlight that the Chronicle project tries to bring together all the key stakeholders involved in the process. And key stakeholders like architects, engineers, facility managers, public authorities, and investors, all of them trying to provide services to the occupant that is on the heart of our solution. A key enabler for developing all these solutions and tools is building holistic and dynamic performance framework, which is nothing more than a set of calculators that try to rate the building beyond energy. And we're talking about KPI calculators that are relevant to comfort, indoor air quality, well-being, social, financial, and sustainability aspects. But as calculators, they do require significant information to be provided to enable those calculations. And to do that, actually, within Chronicle, we integrate two aspects of digital twinning under the digital twin framework. It's the physics-based digital twin and the data-driven digital twin, each of them delivering different aspects of digital twinning. The physics-based is the one that performs the simulations to calculate based on physics-based equations, indicators that are relevant to the KPIs that we see on the right. And the data-driven is the digital twin part that consumes IoT data, metering, sensing data, to train a machine learning, based on machine learning algorithms, different models that are being used to forecast and predict the behavior of the energy systems of the building. And this is how we are addressing one of the issues that is relevant to the gap, the existing gap between simulated and measured performance. The backbone of the digital twin framework, as we said, we do need different data to be used by the simulation engines, the digital twin framework, and the data-driven framework. And the solution that we offer is the common data environment, which is actually a robust middleware that fuses the IoT data with the static data, the BIM data, coming in open formats like IFC. And based on that tool, we ensure smooth data exchange between the tools involved in the whole process. And this is how we address another challenge, that is how we achieve what we call semantic interoperability. So, 2 years fast forward, and the Chronicle project has moved from concept to actual implementation. And from the image that we see here, that was the conceptual architecture, we have moved to a more detailed architecture. This is the first layer of the architecture. It is much more complex. There are many other layers that are not being presented here. And I cherry-picked from this architecture some of the user interfaces that are being developed by different partners. The one is the user interface relevant to digital building logbook, which actually presents to the end user the record of the building, along with some activities that should be taken for the specific building. The renovation planner app, CrowView Ren, which is actually an application that has been developed to evaluate different renovation options. That means that the user of the tool can design through the user interface different renovation scenarios, combine different renovation measures under each renovation scenario. This information then is being sent to the common data environment to be consumed by the digital twin framework, perform the calculations, and provide KPI values for each scenario back to the user of the CrowView Ren. And actually through this process, the user of the app could decide which of the renovation options, renovation scenarios, is the one that should be selected. Last but not least is the CrowView FM, an application for facility managers, which some of the functionalities that it offers is the BIM visualization data, and upon clicking specific elements, showcase results relevant to IoT data that are measured, but also predictions and forecasts provided by machine learning algorithms that I mentioned before. I will close this session, actually this presentation, with 2 key challenges that we faced in the whole process. The one is relevant to how we collect data that are being required to perform all those simulations in the digital twin framework. And actually, this is not something new. To perform building energy performance simulations in every simulation engine, we do require static data, dynamic data, weather data, and other simulation parameters. And although it's quite easy the way how we collect weather data and other simulation parameters, it's quite challenging to cover the need for robust and accurate static and dynamic data. And I'm saying that because typically when you are trying to collect those data, you are developing a building energy performance simulation model from scratch, which actually requires significant effort. And based on the modeler experience, you can receive completely different results. And with regards to dynamic data, it comes as no surprise that we are typically using deterministic models, which means based on the type of the building and the location, we use predefined schedules on how the systems operate, simulating somehow not the actual behavior of the occupant, but typical operations of the systems based on different standards. And to overcome this challenge, actually, what we did within Chronicle, at first we developed an ETL tool, as we call. It's a tool that transforms actually the BIM data automatically to input of the simulation engine relevant to static data. And for the dynamic data, what we managed to deliver is to formalize the way the data relevant to machine learning results and so on are representing using the occupant behavior XML, which is more or less a standard way to representing the dynamic data of building simulation engines. So this is how we did address this challenge, and through co-simulation between those two aspects, the OBXML that I mentioned before and the BIM to BEP, managed to reduce the gap between simulated and measured performance. The last key challenge, sorry Andre, just a couple of minutes to present this slide. It's relevant to how we integrate data, and this is relevant to the developments of the common data environment that I presented earlier, and how we try to minimize the effort required to collect all those data. We know that it's not that much easy task to develop an open BIM model. When I'm saying open BIM, I'm referring to IFC4. It's also quite challenging using BIM authoring tools, commercial products like Revit, to export IFC files, for example, that meet the requirements. So what we've done within Chronicle is two actions that we took. The first is to provide some guidelines to the BIM modeler through a document that guides him or her to design the model so as to cover all the requirements that we have and are relevant to BIM. And the other part is to implement within the common data environment an information delivery specification. Actually, the information delivery specification is a term that is being used by Building Smart and the Open BIM community, and represents how the data relevant to Open BIM and IFC should be exchanged to meet the requirements of the project. So these ideas that has been developed allow us to validate that an IFC file provided to us meet the requirements, and if the requirements are not met, we are generating a report in a building collaboration format. I don't know if you are familiar with the terminology. I can explain during the break afterwards, to visualize where the issues of the BIM are. Exactly, the location. By loading this specific file in any viewer, you can be informed about the issues that are relevant to the BIM provided. Here's the process that we follow. And as I've seen many projects, another challenge is to develop a common data environment. It's not only about BIM that we have been discussing so far, it's also about how you fuse IoT data with BIM data. And the process that we followed within Chronicle is to use, to the extent possible, existing ontologies that are based on standards. And two ontologies that have been used within Chronicle are the brick schema and for the IoT part, and the bot ontology for the BIM part. And actually, this concludes my presentation. Sorry for taking a bit longer than expected. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, George. So next, Paris, the floor is yours. And Paris will tell you, again, in a nutshell presentation, lightning talk, all about smart living EPC. Yeah, okay, super. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I'm here to introduce a Smart Living EPC project, a project that started in 2022 with a horizon of 3 years. It's one of the sister projects of Next Gen EPC cluster. And actually you see here more or less the background of the development of the idea of Smart Living EPC. So Smart Living EPC is actually the successor of the E2EPC. So we started with the E2EPC developing some ideas on the KPI enriched EPCs, which exploit practices of Industry 4.0, BIM, digital twins, operational ratings. So these were some of the fields which we defined as let's say the needs for the future EPCs, for the next generation EPCs. We recognize the fact that we are in an era where we have a lot of information concerning the energy performance and the sustainability performance of the building. We also recognize the fact that the assessment of the building, it's not just about energy, but it's also about sustainability. And actually, we have this message from the recast of the EPBD that by 26 we also need to include information concerning the life cycle, the global warming potential of the building. So we need to extend the information provided in EPCs. So having these grounds, we have developed the idea of the Smart Living EPC, which you can simply see in this slide here. So we propose a new rating scheme, a novel rating scheme. Okay, this is in the field of an innovation action, so nothing specific for member states, but it's just an idea. We are testing the idea of, let's say, extending the rating, extending the scale of the assessment of the buildings with additional rating schemes. And actually, in our approach, we have chosen for 4 specific ratings. The first one is apparently the energy rating as we have it in with our standards the past 20 years, and the one that we have been using all this time to do the assessment of the buildings. The second one is a sustainability assessment, and actually we are giving floor, we are giving room to the EU assessment schemes for buildings. So in the case of sustainability assessment, we do wish to exploit levels. Levels is our new sustainability language, our new sustainability scheme. We wish to promote this scheme, and what we take from levels is the sustainability assessment, the LCA assessment that can be delivered using LCA approaches, and apparently we discuss and we refer to the building shell and not to the building technical systems or to the operation of the building, what is realistic actually to be done, the whole building life cycle assessment for the building materials that we are using. We also integrate in this scale the SRI. The SRI is something very specific. We have the scale, it's from 0 to 100. We have the benchmarks for the SRI. We know how to rate the SRI. And the fourth aspect that we have promoted in our approach has to do with the actual performance of the building technical systems in terms of the audits, the technical audits that are implemented for building technical systems. An aspect which has been included in all our directives for the energy performance of buildings since 2002. An aspect which is implemented actually. So all member states have their schemes, their registries with assessors conducting technical audits for the performance of the building technical systems, but an information which is currently not exploited for the EPCs. And since we have, let's say, a regular assessment of the EPCs every 10 years, according to the directive, this is an information that we should also consider for the regular assessment of the EPCs. So these were the 4 assessments that we considered that they should have been integrated into a novel rating scale for a novel EPC, for a next generation EPC. And actually, we started working on these grounds towards developing a new methodology and the tools for assessing buildings with these methodologies. You realize that we have gaps in this case. So for example, what concerns LCA, we don't have benchmarks. So what is a good LCA, what is a bad LCA, what is a good global warming potential indicator, what is a bad? We don't have the benchmarks. So we have a dual challenge. The one is to develop the methodology, and the second one is to find a big data, so significant amount of values in order to introduce benchmarks and let's say reference values. So in the case of LCA, we don't have reference values. Also in the case of the SRI, we are now implementing the testing stages in the member states. Our research group is, let's say, heavily involved in the testing stage in Cyprus. And we are recognizing the fact that the scales, they might be specific in the SRI, but we need to readapt. We need to consider what is realistic and what can be requested for the buildings as recommendations and where the scale should be. So we cannot penalize, for example, a building that operates in an area where there is no smart grid. So in SRI, we have the highest functionalities where systems interact with smart grids. So if a smart grid is not available, we cannot penalize a building for that. So you realize that we have restrictions. In any case, we have developed a methodology, and one of the main characteristics of smart living EPC is the fact that we face the assessment in two levels. The first one is the asset rating, and the second one is the operational rating. And actually, we are developing the methodologies in parallel. We developed the methodology for the asset rating, which concerns the assets of the building, so the energy performance in accordance to the design of the building, the LCA, because the LCA doesn't change with the operation. If it's the whole building LCA, the LCA of the building shell, we don't have any changes through time. Also, what concerns the building technical systems as well, despite the fact that this is related to the operation of the building, this is also not affected by, let's say, the day-to-day performance. We just have a new efficiency which we consider for the assessment. So this on the asset level. And on the operational level, we consider those parameters, those aspects that are related to the day-to-day performance of the building. So the operational rating, the operational energy performance based on the actual energy performance of the building, the indoor air quality, which is something that changes dynamically. It's not something that we have given values, design values. This is something that we need to redefine on a regular basis. And the life cycle costing for any, let's say, aspects that have to do with the upgrade or the operational cost of the building. Now, we do have these two parallel approaches. We do consider this in parallel, and actually the structure of our work is that we had initially work packages where we have developed the methodology for the asset rating and the methodology for the operational rating. And due to the fact that we aim to develop and deliver tools that are going to be used for assessing the buildings with the methodology that we propose, we have a work package which concerns the development of, let's say, the architecture, the methodologies, and the tools that are going to be used. We have a very strong consortium with partners like CERT, IES, Q Technologies, partners with extended expertise in tools development, and also R2M. And another aspect is that in the tools development, we also consider the digital building logbooks aspect. That is, we aim to develop our tools being compatible with DBL principles. We also have those, let's say, tasks in our project which are for applying the tools that we will develop in demonstrators. And the main idea is to develop, let's say, a new approach, a new, let's say, system, a new methodology for assessing the energy of buildings based on the principle of the indicator-enriched methodology and the indicator-enriched assessment. So I would like to thank you for your attention. 9 minutes and 50 seconds. I think I'm great. And
Thank you. Thank you, Paris, very much. I was with the 3-minute sign, and then I became invisible, although I'm a large guy. I felt good that you don't see me. So we continue with Georg, who will present to us Tunes in a nutshell. And Tunes is the most politically oriented project of the family. At least that's how I perceive it. But please, Georg, tell us more.
I guess EPBD-wise, similarly. So, thank you very much. Yeah, so we are not a technical project. Some of you heard it. So briefly, we do this project with 7 energy agencies. I'm not part of that. We are an SME, innovation company, and the coordinator. But I'd like to give a small shout out to the energy agencies, especially the people who are working there. Yes, they have to adapt to change. They have to basically take the better policy developed on European level. But I think it helps to acknowledge that these guys and these women and men are kind of squeezed a little bit. Yeah, they get policy from the EU and they have to implement it nationally with all the barriers and friction there, including the backtrackers and laggards and whatever, and those who resist, be it on regional level, federal level, be it the stakeholders and so on. So when we talk to them and when we find people who are keen to change and make the good decision, make the right call, it's worthwhile acknowledging it. It's good for motivation, I think. So this being said, the project has basically 2 streams. The first I'm going to talk about is basically the practice collection. I focus on that. The second is to develop the national policy papers for what they and how they should recast their own national legislation. This is on the recording. The slides are available on the SharePoint. You can download them if you haven't been present earlier this morning. I'm not going to say much about that. Regarding the collection, yeah, we started one of the first actions, and this result has been available for quite some time, is the collection of practices we observed across the many projects, including in particular those in the Next Gen EPC cluster. We are very grateful for any contributions you've made, and we might like to remind you to repeat that and update any inputs already there. Yeah, so Chronicle Time Pack, Smart Living EPC, and so on. Please make sure that your evidence is collected there. It matters for the policy making. It might matter for the, I don't know what the EC will use as a basis for the guidelines to come, but it definitely helps the member states to have the evidence that a certain action is useful. Yeah, it helps to convince people if there is documented success, and it will become therefore easier to implement a good practice on national level. This is online, it's publicly available. It also includes some national policies, which I also recommend you could add if you are in national projects, not EU projects. There are often research projects also local, national, whatever. So just add them. We are going to add, for instance, the practices Hungary has just implemented because they are a little bit ahead, for instance, of the curve. When it comes to the implementation, it's not entirely compliant, but they have solved a few things quite creatively, I think. So please contribute, please co-edit. It is a Word file. It is obviously a publicly shared Word file, so it is not the most beautiful document in the planet, but feel free to edit and contribute. Another result is, that's why I had my laptop and it locked again, is that we've conducted a survey with quite a few professional respondents. And yeah, this is public, this is available. The questions we asked were based on the problems observed on the member state level. So I think it's formative for you to understand why or what agencies want to change. So for instance, just to go through from top to bottom, most agree that national databases in EPC are valuable. Yeah, the negative ones I actually know come from Austria, where the databases are regional. And the guys who are responsible for the regional database are obviously not happy that they maybe just have to go to one. Then the second one, are the EPC professionals properly trained? And mostly negative. I just skip a few. Then the third from the bottom, audits are necessary for reliable EPCs. is quite strong, and building owners understand what the EPCs are good for. The majority of people says they don't, but there are national differences, and these are also resolved here. For instance, in Italy, more people believe that they know what EPCs are for. The good practice collection, how is it structured? So we briefly describe, hopefully not we, but we started or attempted to collect the first version, and hopefully you correct us in whatever we've written or anyone has written. No motivation description for any given practice. No? One project can be more than one practice. That's obvious. Yeah? If you have implemented different solutions to EPC, then these are different practices. The evidence you collected, very important. What kind of, I don't know, have you tested it with 100 users, assessors, whatever. Any lessons you learned regarding the implementation, any policy recommendations that, for instance, it must be done in such and such way or considered in such and such context. And we added links to the revised EPBD to the degree we think it fits. And yeah, I already pointed this out. It helps member states to make policy because it benefits from your creativity. Yeah? You basically come up for a solution. You are researchers. You imagine it, the issue and try to solve it already. And the evidence helps us to assess the impacts. If there is the benefit 2% savings or 15% savings. The impacts shift, change policy making. And even if you have negative results, please document them. Yeah? Because the obvious thing is not to repeat mistakes which have been already done. And in the spirit of the Next Gen EPC cluster, you can add practices, please do that. And if you have content but you don't totally sure how to implement it, then forward it to us and we would take care of it. That's not a problem with us. And it's just good to know what to focus on, because see it from our side, we are confronted with 20, 30 projects, and it's hard to know where the gold is hidden. Yeah, you need to point out to us where it is. Okay, I leave it at that. Thank you.
Very good, Georg. You really did a lightning talk. They say lightning talks shouldn't be longer. Yeah, that was in the beginning. Because I looked at the definition of a lightning talk and it says a presentation below 7 minutes. But then we got a bit more time. So thank you very much. My job is again easier. Next, well, I should say last but certainly not least, Denisa is with us to represent EPBD-wise. If you like to sit down, then you have the microphone there. So please tell us about EPBD-wise. What results do you already have?
Can you hear me? Is it working, I think? Okay, so I hope you still have a bit of energy left for this very last session. I also hope I'll be very fast and concise. My name is Denisa Diacono. I'm a project manager at BPIE, Buildings Performance Institute Europe, and I'm representing here the EPBD-wise project. Just a few words about BPIE before starting the presentation. We are a European think tank based in Berlin and Brussels. We are running since 2010, and we are basically providing policy advice on building regulations based on independent research with the aim of increasing the energy performance of the built environment. I will concentrate in my presentation on the policy needs part of our project. So what is needed for an effective EPBD implementation. This is the brief overview of what I prepared for today. The idea is that we have a new policy framework, the revised EPBD, and member states will have 2 years, or less than 2 years, because the transposition period has already started, to put into national legislation all those provisions. Most of them were strengthened, most of them are also very new, so member states will have to understand these new provisions. Yeah, so we have updated standard for new buildings, which is the zero emission building standard. We have renovation policies for existing buildings. Basically, the newly introduced minimum energy performance standards and the national trajectories for progressive renovation. We have tools and instruments for planning the 2050 vision for buildings decarbonization. And here I focus, or I target mostly the national building renovation plans, and we also have a stronger enabling framework where we put the EPCs, for instance, the renovation passports, the one-stop shops, and so on. I wanted to start with this just to give you a brief overview of the provisions of the recast EPBD. And now I can move on to the description of the EPBD WISE project, which is basically intended to provide support to member states in the effective implementation of the EPBD. And our aim in the project is threefold. So we provide guidance for public authorities in 6 focus countries in designing, implementing, and also monitoring and evaluating the provisions of the EPBD. We are trying to do that in a consistent approach, trying to identify the synergies between all those policy instruments and provisions, and building on that knowledge and those lessons learned, we try to build a replicable model to support the EPBD implementation across EU. So we are quite a young project. We started in last year in October, and the project will run until 2025. Above you can see, below you can see the project partners, and here, it's how we structured this project. We start with the first phase, trying to understand the policy needs at the national level. We are trying to map all those policy gaps. And based on that, we then, in the phase 2, try to come up with solutions, with measures that can support those member states in overcoming some of those policy needs. Again, as I was telling before, based on all that knowledge, we are trying to replicate those results developed in phase 2 as a blueprint to provide the ground of replication for the other member states in EU. There is also an exploitation phase that is not really at the bottom, but actually goes in parallel with the 3 phases, because the project also has a strong stakeholder engagement dimension. We organize, for instance, policy forums in the member states, in the focus countries, and I will detail that in a second. Where we discuss with policymakers, and we try also to validate our own results in the project. So these are the countries. We concentrate in Bulgaria, Greece, Hungary, Poland, Romania, and Ukraine. So for each of these countries, we are going to provide country-specific policy recommendations in how to implement the EPBD. And what I also prepared for this presentation, it's our preliminary results from the policy needs mapping and identification. I don't think I'll have the time to go through each policy element, but what I want to say about it is the fact that the necessity of better data, of quality data, has been an element identified throughout all the policy elements that we cover in this project. And another thing that I want to mention regarding the other policy elements before concentrating on EPC is the fact that member states also sometimes lack the institutional and technical capacity to put forward and to put in place the provisions. For instance, I can say a few words about the national building renovation plans that are quite complex and encompassing tools, and basically they have to be a planning instrument, but not only a planning instrument, but also a reporting one. So that's why it's every provision from the EPBD should be reflected, it should be included in the national renovation plans. And now about the EPCs, I think it's really important to not see I don't know, so here it is, the slide for the EPC, to not look at the EPC as an instrument happening or used in a void. I think now with the recast EPBD, it's even more clear that it's an instrument that has been strengthened, but also that has received different hats. For instance, I mean, we have the EPC for data collection. It's an amazing tool for collecting data that can be used for the implementation of minimum energy performance standards, for the elaboration of the national building renovation plans, but also it's now a tool for providing compliance for MEPS, for the minimum energy performance standards. What else? Yeah, and it's clear. Of course, in addition, the new EPC will have to calculate and disclose the global warming potential for new buildings. So again, different additions to the EPC. I think I can conclude my talk with the idea that it's important to pay attention to how all these instruments interact with each other, because the way that we put them in a framework will be really important. And I think looking at these synergies would also help us enhance how they perform and how they achieve the impact that they were created for. Yeah, it's our aim in the EPBD-wise to look at those synergies and make sure that they are reflected in the transposition and implementation process. Again, I will highlight once again the necessity to obtain high-quality data and to create data-driven policies at the national level. Of course, just to keep that loop, we also need to put in place feedback and monitoring mechanisms so we know exactly the impact, the progress that we achieved, and all that should be supported by financial incentives, by policy instruments, such as one-stop shops that are encouraging people to better understand these provisions and to engage in the renovation journey. Thank you.
Perfect, Denisa. Right on time. You can stay there. I kindly ask the fellow speakers, Leandro, Paris, George, Georg, please come back. And if you could please change the slide, 2 slides forward. Voila. So for the online participants, you can also see the colleagues in the digital realm. Sorry guys, it's a bit squeezed. This podium is meant for 4 speakers. We are very inclusive in our cluster, so we have 5. That's the only way we can go farther together as opposed to fast alone. So I think I can be a moderator as a business as usual practice. Each day I can do this with such great speakers that keep time. I mean, it's amazing. Also the previous session and this one. So really, congrats. Thank you very much for that. You've waited. I'm sure you have some questions. I have many on my side, but I want to make it as interactive as possible for you guys in the audience. So who would like to break the ice? We are now at the interactive side of our second session. It can be also one of you as speakers, of course. Okay, Erwin. Very good. This is all about, that's what this is all about.
was the first session, Simon again. So, but please do not hold in there. So Erwin Cornelis of ANEC, and well, it's great to see that the EPC as a tool is getting more a high maturity and is also being expanded in use. Yet I do have a concern that as it is used and also in various ways, that the people might be lost in how it's used and also in the name, so that the EPC in different contexts start also to mean different things. And from this could be a misconception on the EPC and also, well, what it means and also what people can expect from it. And I'm wondering whether there is also not a bit harmonization in language, so that we speak of EPC in a specific context, and one could be, which was the original intended one, so the asset rating in specific context, for instance, when transferring property from one person to another person or renting, that could be one, and then using other terms when it comes to other uses. Well, yeah, so for instance, the digital building logbook, which could be a term. So, well, this is my question: whether you also do need a more elaborate language aligned with the elaboration of EPC as a tool. That's my question. Thank you.
Who would like to tackle that one? Leandro, please.
Well, I fully agree. I fully agree, and I think I suggested in my first slide that maybe certification is not a name that we need anymore, because in the concept itself, it's not only about putting a label at an object, like when you buy a product on the shop. We are looking at something else. A building is much more complex. It's not an isolated object that you buy, and you want to be sure that what you buy is performing as it's written. It changes over time. It's part of a much more larger context. So I think we are making a mess. I agree. I think we're making a mess. And the first part is the certificate. The name of certification, maybe, I mean, it's a heritage. It's very difficult also in language. It happens in normal language. Once the words have received certain meaning, it's very difficult to change them. And we know that in normal language. So the same, probably something similar has happened here, I think. We are no longer in the universe, in the mindset of the original EPC. I think we changed completely. And even the new recast recognizes that. But we are in a way prisoners of the language. And we still talk about certification. So maybe we can solve that like we do in normal language by understanding the context without making explicit. But maybe we really at some point need to say, okay, this is no longer certification, this is something else. So I think we are in this stage in between. We can keep going with the name EPC, I think, if we understand what we mean. But maybe there's a point where EPC is no longer EPC.
I would also like to add, I don't think the language is a problem, but your results are very similar to our results in the project, and you were mentioning that the countries, the people that you have been interviewing in the countries that you cover in your project are not aware of the value of the EPC, right? Or they don't really understand the benefits of the EPC. And I think that the issue here is to help people better understand the benefits, and also, yeah, just it's a perception problem, I think. I mean, we can solve the many things that the EPC is now encompassing by clearly targeting the EPC can do this, and just highlight the benefits that can bring to building owners or tenants.
On the other hand, we are doing research here. Come on, guys. It's an innovation action. It's a TRL7. If we don't experiment, if we don't put ideas on the table, if we don't brainstorm, if we don't discuss about other approaches, then this is something different. So what concerns our project, I think it's our role to give new ideas, to experiment, to investigate, to develop new things. But we need to know where are we right now. We are in a room where innovation actions are presented. Our projects are TRL7. TRL7, it means I have a concept, I develop that, and I test it under operational conditions. This is the level of our projects, at least for the innovation actions, not for the policy projects. So I think we are allowed to do this, in this room at least. These projects, we are allowed to try different ideas, have new meanings, have new approaches, have new concepts. And at the end of the day, we have the policy level, which will take the decision which of these ideas can be integrated into policies. And then what concerns the member states will follow the directive. They will not follow what the research projects design or develop. So I think it's our role to be creative, and this is what we should be doing. If we don't do that, then we failed. We are not doing research. But at the end of the day, I'm giving the floor to Georg. Yes, the EPC in general is not as we wish it were, and because you come from ANEC, for the consumers, currently EPCs do not offer significant information. So it is an information when a building is to be rented or to be purchased, but that's all. They don't get any more information concerning details for the energy performance of the building, benchmarks, recommendations. So we are not using the EPC for this kind of information. And this is what our projects are trying to do, to develop the EPCs, to make them a more, let's say, informative document, which will provide more details, more insight to the building user, to the building owner. And we want to do this not just for the design stage of the building, but also for the operational stage of the building. So we are in this direction. We are trying to make the EPC a more informative document, a more informative assessment, and that's why we're here.
For the record, we do welcome these innovations.
Yeah, I can only second that. I mean, we Empirica, we do both innovation actions and such policy action, and the mission is different. Yeah, I mean, the one is to try and possibly fail even, whatever, but it provides evidence for policy making. Yeah? And in the policy making, I mean, the member states, which choices they need to make, it's not the point to make an EPC. It's the point to achieve impact through the EPC. That's the thing. So whatever choices the member states will make is with regard to what achieves the desired impact, energy savings, improved health, whatever, greenhouse gas emissions, that's the right answer. Yeah? And this is what we try to find.
Yeah, actually, I think that I've been covered by the previous speakers. Just to highlight that we are quite often lost on the terminology. So it's not only about how we define EPC, what we do to deliver something that resolves an issue. So I think that we're progressing well on that. There are tools that are being developed to implement EPC and so on. But we realize that it's quite complex to make it meaningful and easily understandable by the average persons, let's say. So it might be a nice idea to involve on the definitions of terminologies and so on different stakeholders, not only policymakers or technical innovators and so on, but also people that do not have that expertise. And they understand the energy performance of a building in a different way from the end user perspective. That's all from my side.
Erwin, very good. You touched everybody. That was a great question. Next one. Please.
Hello, I'm Yan Gang Singh from Nottingham Trent University. I'm an associate professor teaching building physics. I'm also chairing CIPC intelligent building groups. We have over 30 senior managers from different companies like MSI, FM, it's what you're mentioning, EPC, I think have been useful. Certainly, I can notice that building has been improved in terms of insulation since 1970s, 1980s. But anyway, EPC is based on model. Models are not real. Models are always wrong. But some models might be useful. I think how we can make EPC more useful is interesting. But today I'll have a question for George, specifically about the technology you mentioned. You mentioned there are two challenges, discrepancies and interoperability. That is really, I think the EPC is a limitation, but other limitations you mentioned, languages, training, and that is important. But there's so many things about discrepancies. But one thing I just wondered whether you can share some challenges in the IoT sensors in terms of selections, validations, and also challenges in terms of AI training models. So what type of AI algorithms, data you used, any kind of challenges with two technical aspects, probably it's too technical, too detailed, but if you can share, that would be very grateful.
Maybe if you can use that microphone, just bring it closer. And just kindly ask you to not go too much, because you can also go bilateral afterwards. This is very to the point.
I do agree that this question is quite technical. The good thing is that I'm strongly involved on all these machine learning algorithms and so on. So for sure, we learned too much at first from how we are receiving data of high quality. It's not only about sensing different aspects of the building, but also how you apply, let's call them filters, to make those data meaningful and easily used for the different machine learning algorithms that are implemented to actually predict or forecast different aspects of the building. For example, I can give some examples. We do know that, for example, for a specific type of HVAC system, the AC split units, we are using Gaussian processes. It's a type of machine learning algorithm that has been selected after a very thorough study. We started from, as always, we start for the less complex algorithms and try to put complexity if the results of the simplified models are not convincing, let's say. So for the Gaussian process models, we do use data that are to train, for example, the energy consumption of the specific and try to predict the next power level of the system. We use different features. So selecting is a key challenge. It's selecting the relevant features that make an impact on the result is something that needs to be considered in the whole procedure of selecting the algorithm, but also trying to minimize the effort that is required to train the model and predict, forecast the behavior of the system. There are many, many things to be discussed for this specific question. The one is about data quality. The other is about data consistency. The other is about gaps, how you work, how you tackle gaps that you have on IoT data, and different algorithms that are being applied, how you detect outliers on your data set that make an impact, a huge impact on the trained model, and so on. There are many, many aspects that I would be happy to be discussed at the end of the session.
Super, thank you. To keep it in the innovation realm, Paris, because we were talking now about forecasting, but there is this, let's say, evolution that took place in the cluster. It was really a breeding ground for this approach, because we started from asset rating, and I would say EPCs are a big success if we just consider their initial scope. But of course, things have evolved, and the complexity of building performance is recognized more and more with each recast of EPBD. And this is, for me as an engineer by profession, education, I also worked a bit in the sector, this is where we should be going. IEQ is now incorporated in EPBD, although it was only energy, global warming potential, and so on, many non-energy side of things. And this is the only way we can actually improve things Otherwise, we will just have things on paper. I mean, paper can withstand anything, or digital documents. And I know, Paris, you were involved in several projects on this concept of operational rating, which is not measured performance, because I think you standardize, you bring things back in standards condition, like in asset rating. Could you please detail a bit and explain to us how do you think this could fit? Because this dimension is getting more attention in the EPBD recast.
Yeah, actually, we have a very nice coincidence currently, and this coincidence are the smart meters. We know that by 2030, we wish, in accordance to other directives, to have in all buildings smart meters installed. At the same time, we have the concept of the smart city, of the smart building, of the automation and control systems, of the monitoring. So we are progressing, we are evolving. And what we need to do is to be able to understand these developments and adapt our methods of assessing buildings with the practices that we currently use. And one of these, let's say, developments is the so-called operational rating. So we have had this in the standards in the recent past, just as a definition, and with some generic descriptions. But what needs to be done, and actually we started that from the EPC, and we are continuing that with Smart Living EPC and with Chronicle project, because Chronicle project also has an aspect on that, is that we are trying to finalize a standard that will describe the steps for the operational rating of a building. We have some key challenges there. For example, benchmarks. It's an issue. We don't have reference values. We don't have values for building stocks. So this comes in combination with the need for the further development of the building stock observatory, where we will get some representative values for the entire building stock in the EU member states. You know the Observe project, we start with high hopes in November to support the building stock observatory, because this will fit our efforts for the operational rating. In any case, I believe all the projects are flirting with the idea of developing, or not just flirting, they are actually supporting activities which will enable the establishment of the operational rating, will put the, let's say, the measurements that we can get from our smartphone, from smart meters that we have, from smart cities, from smart buildings infrastructure that we are developing, into the calculation procedure and to the definition of the actual performance of the buildings. We started this discussion quite some time ago. So as a researcher, I have publications of 2010 comparing asset rating and operational rating in energy and buildings, and defining that in some cases we have gaps of 200% or even more. Why? Because at that time we had the cooling aspect. For the south, we have a lot of cooling. It was not well described in the standards. The first standard, the 13790 standard of 2004, was a standard only for heating loads. It didn't even include cooling loads. So we had these gaps, but the fact is that we made huge steps towards, let's say, completing the pieces of the puzzle and having all the information that we require to have a reliable operational rating of buildings. It's not that easy. We still have gaps. Our projects, we are working towards delivering knowledge. We are trying to finalize a standard on that with the support of EPB Center in some cases not. But we have a very productive discussion, and actually it's for us to become better and have a better result. But in any case, this I feel is something that should be in the field of discussion for quite some time, until we reach, let's say, conclusion where we all say that, okay, we agree on what we have. And the other important aspect, we can, in this case, as in the case of the SRI as well, we can, let's say, be proactive and avoid the diversification that we have with the asset rating. So if we have a standard, and if we, let's say, indicate that this is how we're going to do this, let's start from that, and let's develop together, then apparently we can bring things closer, and we will avoid the deviation that we have with the asset rating.
Thank you, Paris. Indeed, I mean, there's always the discrepancy in terms of ambition, because I think that's what, that was the main lesson learned with EPCs, with the asset rating, that, okay, the level of ambition was different depending on the calculation methodology. So I fully agree and support that it should go the SRI approach, inclusive, everybody joining from the beginning and doing things together. Coming back to policy level, I'm looking at Georg and Denisa. Georg, you refer to them as energy agencies. It depends on the member state if it's directly the ministry or they delegate the power to support the implementation or certain elements of EPBD implementation, whereas Denisa, you refer to them as member states. But I'm just curious because you're really getting close to them, like to the people that are actually, they have the pen in their hand and they need to make it happen in their country, so to speak, figuratively. Georg, how did the Energy Agency take on, although you didn't detailed, we know you have the better regulation method, this evidence-based method. How did they take it, and can you give some concrete examples what they did? And Denisa, the same for member states that you already worked with, because I'm sure you had these forums in a few countries. Are they open to discuss with you? Do they appreciate your support? Because you talked about they not having enough capacity to actually make things happen. They are a bit overwhelmed, if you wish. I'm just curious to hear these aspects.
Thank you, Denise. Okay, first on, I mean, it's just the fact that we do the project with the energy agencies. Yeah, I mean, ultimately the ministries are the ones who are preparing the legislative acts, whatever it is, law to bring to parliament or regulate. So what the agencies are doing are preparing this step, or the partners with whom we are doing it. So they are preparing the step, they are creating basically the basis for any such law to come. They're not writing it themselves, they are preparing the evidence, they're making a recommendation, argued and hopefully well designed and well sourced and well informed, but it's all incomplete information. Yeah, I mean, nobody will tell you if you do this, then this happens, because this doesn't exist. Hence my repeated urge to share any evidence you have and to make it happen. As to the process with the energy agencies, it is for them it's new. I mean, first of all, basically. It's easier for them just to answer a technical question and leave it at that. For them to get even involved in the policymaking process is generally a new experience. But since they are rational people, they are very well, once understood, very well received the impact assessment approach very well. Yeah? The thing is, it's complicated. There are many. I mean, I used the image recently that there are many threads and you need to tie them together to make a rope out of it. Yeah? And it's hard to explain multiple things at the same time. You have to do it one by one. So it takes some time. So in the beginning, it was tougher, but now after a year, they are definitely on track. And I hope they we make good progress further and ultimately a good policy paper out of it for each of them. So it's, I think, as with any kind of training, you need to get the people on board. If you keep them, if they don't run away, then you can keep them motivated and they will do it ultimately. I guess that's the answer.
Okay, thank you. And Denisa, what's the experience in EPBD-wise?
Yeah, so the target audience for EPBD-wise are indeed the policymakers, so public authorities, both at the national and local level, because sometimes for some provisions it's better to talk directly with the local level. But our approach towards reaching out and contacting the authorities responsible for implementing EPBD-wise was not a direct one, but an indirect one. So for the 6 countries that we are covering in the project, we also have what we called in the project focus country contact points. So through them, we are facilitated this contact with the public authorities in the countries. Because
they are partners, or?
They have been subcontracted in the project. So sometimes it's better to have an ally at the national level, because talking directly with the ministries, and maybe it's, yeah, I should not tell that like publicly, but they try to hide some of what's happening at the national level. So it's better to work with people that are just very well connected to the national realities. And they can also tell you like the perceptions, the things that are discussed between closed doors. I mean, this was our approach in the project. We learned that you get more information than by directly talking with the public authorities or just reading some, I don't know, desk research reports and so on. Yeah, and regarding how open are they and how interested in our support, they really are, because they also, I mean, they are also looking forward to reading the guidance that European Commission is preparing right now. But yeah, I mean, they are interested in all sources of information, because as I was saying at the beginning of my presentation, a lot of the provisions are quite new and they really want to understand what they have to do. And actually, during our discussions with them, they were, all the countries were asking about best practices and lessons and things that they can just use for their countries. And another thing that I also want to mention in regards with your question is the fact that they're really open to work with us. But I think what we also encourage them to do is work between them. Because maybe it's the reality in your countries too, but for efficiency, energy efficiency in buildings, there are several ministries or institutions responsible. For instance, in Poland or in Romania, there are at least 3 ministries working on that. So if they do not collaborate, if they do not work together, our support will be only as, I don't know, will be significant, but they also have to put all that work, yeah, together.
Okay, yeah. Great. Georgi, you were nodding. Do you want to say one more sentence?
Yeah, 2 or 3 caveats. First of all, regarding cooperation, yeah, I mean, it's basically, they don't only have to, they have to open up and share, yeah, something they would normally not do. Not only bilaterally, that's a different level because you do it on a higher level. We do it between agencies, that's already an achievement, but that's the beauty of European projects, European Union, yeah? The dust bowl keeps rolling, gets bigger and bigger and bigger, takes everyone with it. So that's great. Just 2 points. The people also have biases. Yeah, they have a bias. They think something is a problem, and then you need to collect the evidence to make the check of whether this is true or not. And then you need to maybe convince them that it's not. And what was the second point? Can't be that important, forget it.
Thank you, thank you. So already we can see that research and policy cannot only coexist, but they can be supportive. I mean, we can see how like tunes and EPBDYs can leverage the testing, the trials, failures sometimes, but lessons learned and best practices at the end. Yes, please.
Adding on that, so those policy needs reports where one part was identifying the policy needs and one part was coming up with best practice examples so that we can overcome. And a lot of information was coming from those projects. I mean, it's really important to push them forward and to make them available, because sometimes people at the national level are not aware of those projects existing, and they provide a lot of useful tools that they can use at the national level to, I don't know, collect data, to improve the quality of data, and so on. That was what I wanted.
Super. With that, we could even close the session, but I have one more question for Leandro, because we are missing the education and training side of things. That's my feeling. And we can take one more question from the audience after, and then we wrap it up, because I promised, we are only 2 minutes what I promised. So, Leandro, a big element of your project is the TimePack Academy.
Yes.
And we have the example of SmarterEPC. They have the hub for tools. Are you thinking to make a hub for training? Because there is a plethora of training coming out of these projects. But there's not a a space for it to fit together in the EU dimension, so to say. Did you reflect on this?
Yes, actually, we are reflecting on that now because we have also an exploitation plan, which is our final deliverable, by the way, like many projects, and always a very difficult one. I think through the experience of the project, we have realized, as I said before, that there is a need for training, and we have checked that with the real actors. The people who have attended our courses are professionals. I can speak about the ones in Barcelona, which I had in-class training. They were coming consultants, energy agencies from the city. So the audience was really keen to know about what is the new EPBD, how is it changing, how should we change our work, actually. So they are really aware that things are changing, but they want to know in which direction they should go. So I think that this need will not finish in the next months. I think it's a long-term need that somebody will have to answer. I don't know if Time Pack. One of the ideas of Time Pack after the end of the project is to provide an umbrella for all of this knowledge that comes from projects like has happened now, and as we did during the project, to give a voice and to give a space for that. So I think because the demand is going to be there, so somebody has to provide this answer. Time Pack could be the umbrella for all of this research knowledge come and be delivered locally, and also helping people to move forward because they need certain guidance, they need certain directions. I don't think they need so much our tools or our methods because some people came to our courses that really they are developing their own tools and so on. And so I don't think it's so much about tools, but it's mainly about directions to move forward step by step. And the other thing I think is very important is that, I mean, we talk about data in general, not only EPC, but general in data in any other field. There is a risk that we develop very complex models to analyze the reality. As you said before, models are always wrong. It's always like that. Data is not accurate or does not exist or is not curated. So we create nevertheless models with this data, and then we believe this data, and we intend to draw conclusions that will change reality. And the key thing is the connection between the model and the reality. And there is a high risk that we only work on the model with the data floating in a void, isolated, and we continue making very sophisticated tools, simulation, and I don't know what, but we are only working on the abstract realm of data. We are not touching reality of the real buildings, the real actors, the investment, the people who are involved. So I think here in the EPC, in the discussion we had, this division, this gap between model thinking and data and reality, it's a key thing. In general, it is in any other field, but here in particular, because I mean, we cannot go too far in collecting data and so on, only because we have to justify that we have the data. I mean, what we want is to improve the built environment. That's what we want to do, and improve not only energy, but the life of people. It's not only about saving energy, it's about saving people in this context of the climate change. So I think we have to be aware where we frame the discussion, because if we go very narrow in our thing, I think we lose the whole thing. So going back to training, yes, but sharing this overall view and knowing where everybody is in that overall context.
That's great, thank you. Any last question from the audience? If not, we exhausted. I said 5:40, we are there. Gala dinner is waiting for all of us. Really, a big round of applause for our speakers again. And those that took notes, I think there are many ideas for next year's calls. Floating in the room. So let's continue. If you could go please to the last slide. Yeah, so my summary is, let's continue going farther together as opposed to fast alone. The ideas are there, we have lessons learned, we just need to go forward, and I think one element you touched a lot in this panel is that it's a long process, so it's not something that will happen overnight. It takes patience, resilience, we have failures on the way sometimes, but we shouldn't hide them under the rug, we should learn from them. So let's continue doing that together and reach new heights and hopefully support member states in the process and make their lives easier and more meaningful in terms of actually achieving our goals to decarbonize the building stock. So thank you everybody, stay in touch. If you are not registered to any newsletter of this cluster, please do so. We are discussing to create one single newsletter so that you register once and then you're updated for life, but let's see how that works out. Thank you a lot again, and yeah, enjoy the gala dinner and continue coming tomorrow. There are many other interesting sessions.